Hello, everybody. Great. All right. Thank you all for being here in Washington, D.C. today. We got beautiful weather, so that's a huge plus. Um, I'm very excited to be moderating this panel on the venture capital ecosystem in D.C., especially because I've been in the ecosystem for so many years in so many different ways. I was a fintech founder, I was an angel investor, I run a VC fund, and I also, K Street Capital, my firm also manages the district's fund of funds program that invests in fund managers who invest in DC companies. So lots of different, perspectives from all of that over the years. And we have some great panelists who also have been here for many, many years and have great perspectives on it as well. So I think this will be super interesting. So I'll tell you a little bit about K Street, my company, myself. Like I said, I started out as a fintech founder, exited my company in 2018. Became an angel investor. I've personally invested in about 45 tech startups, mostly in DC, but all across the country through K Street. And K Street invests directly into startups as sort of like syndicated angel investments. And then we also have a fund that invests in early stage startups, anywhere from seed to Series A. And we're industry agnostic with the exception that we focus on regulated markets. And that doesn't mean reg tech, defense tech, or necessarily any of those things, but just companies that operate in a regulated market. So think fintech, climate tech, cybersecurity, health tech, all of those spaces. So that's us. That's what we focus on. And before we kick it off, let's do some intros. Yeah, if you guys want to just share how long you've been in DC, a little bit about your firms and investment focus, and then we'll go from there. Cool. John, I'll start with you.
Yes, first. On. There we go. Okay. John Backus. I have lived here since the late 80s, and I've been doing venture since 1999. So I started out doing seed and early stage, and over the last 10 years, we've sort of moved up to doing sort of late A rounds and B rounds. We are geography agnostic. So generally, the smaller the company is, the younger the company is, the closer the investor has to be to the company. As you move up the food chain, capital really becomes agnostic. And so, we'll invest in great ideas that we see anywhere, not just in the US, but around the world. We like them to be US companies and all, but Proof is a fund that has kind of a unique twist. We get our deals from other VCs, and we pay them 10 of our 20 points of carry, so half of our profit for any deal they bring us, for every dollar that we put in every round, and it helps, I call it create sort of a virtuous ecosystem, because their incentive to bring us the best deal. I mean, if you bring us a bad deal and we don't make money on it, you don't make money either. So that's sort of what we do with a twist.
I love what you just said there, John, about capital kind of just shifting through the life cycle of the fund. My name is Michelle Bokirin Urben. I'm Filipino-American, so I'm happy to be here in front of you. I know some of you or most of you have traveled far to be here for the few days of Selects USA. I was hoping the Philippines would be here, but we also look towards DC and we look towards the US for tech ideas, right? So there are a lot of technology within the US that, as these are commercialized, could make great impact in emerging countries like the Philippines. I guess I'm the younger newbie in DC. I'm 5 years in DC. We moved here during the first month of the pandemic. I'm a mother to a 6-year-old, and I have fallen in love with the district. So at the Synergos Fund, we invest across the cap structure, but in collaboration with the district, we do want to help invigorate the economy here by dedicating a quantum of capital to startups in the district, and with the right incentives and the right foundation to locate, in as much as possible, our portfolio companies here. We like the pyramid. We like energy, food, and health. I myself am a late entrant into investing in venture. I started 4 or 5 years ago in space technologies. Curio is our nuclear company here based in Washington, D.C. that is slated to be hopefully the first recycler of the spent nuclear fuel of the U.S. We're on K Street. We're very proud of that company. But yeah, I'm excited to be here with Paige taking us through the journey of DC, and I love DC, so we have happy hour after too. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me today. My name is Matt Gittleman. I run a small family office here in the DC area. I always tell people that family office is the wrong word for it because I really am just focused on early stage venture. So I kind of say the GP of an evergreen micro VC, but it's a little bit of a mouthful. So I start with the family office side. I've been in venture for about 9 years now. Spent 4 years investing out of a more traditional fund, doing early stage cybersecurity investing, and now have a very broad mandate. But as I was talking with some of the panelists here before, we're really focused on companies building really novel and interesting data sets with the intention of solving kind of systemic industry-wide problems or blind spots. And so with that, we invest as sort of the extension of an angel investor, which is really what my role looks like. But when you invest as the extension of an angel investor, a lot of the folks at this table don't really want to talk to you because it's too small of a check. And so I also, here in DC, building community here, co-lead a group called VC in DC, which now plays host to 650 institutional VCs as members, 250 firms. And the idea there is for a small investor like myself to stay better plugged in with the local ecosystem, see more interesting deal flow. We do invest technically nationally, but again, given the small check sizes, and then to John's point, we do invest more locally when and if possible, just given coffee chats and lunches are a great way to get to know and build relationships. Yeah, I think that should probably do it. Oh, actually, I will say, until I was 10, I lived in Brussels, and I moved here as having been to Belgian schools the whole time, and so the international aspect of all this is not lost on me, and I've called DC home pretty much ever since then. Spent a few years in Boston, a few years in Pennsylvania during college, but otherwise I've been here.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So actually, I'm glad that you brought up that you have 250 firms in DC, in VC in DC, which
Two-thirds of which are between Richmond and Baltimore.
I was going to say. So there's about 300 VCs located in and around the DC area within 45 minutes of DC, which is kind of wild. Like, I don't think people realize that. We were just talking about it earlier. It's a pretty big scene here if you're trying to raise capital, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. So anyway, that leads me to our first question, which is, what are some of the benefits to being located in DC? Whether personally or as the founder, but like, what is the scene for startups in DC? If you have any other facts or stats to share, like that one about VCs located here, let's do that now.
I'll jump on that one first. So what I love about DC is it's not just DC. We call it the DMV. It's DC, Maryland, Virginia. And what I love about DC's position is, if you think about it, startup founders are generally young, and they want to hang around other young people. They're not going to do that in Potomac, Maryland, or Tysons Corner, Virginia. They want to do that in DC. So what I love about this area is you basically have the startups that want to be located here, but you're drawing from all of the talent locally in the DMV. So I sort of look at DC as sort of, don't just look at it as DC, look at it as DC as sort of the epicenter of the entire DC, Maryland, Virginia ecosystem.
So happy to jump in here as well. DC is a secondary or tertiary market in terms of deployed capital from a venture capital perspective. There's no doubt about that. Having said that, as a result, investors here are much more collaborative than they are in some of the larger ecosystems. When a seed round here gets done, a $2 million seed round gets done, very rarely does an investor here take the whole $2 million. They're going to share it with some of their close confidants. K Street's going to share deals with me. I'm going to try to share deals with Proof, and now we're going to share deals with you as much as we can with Synergos. And so the idea is that you're going to need 4 or 5 investors to be part of some of these rounds. And that means that building relationships here in some ways is more important than probably any other of the kind of top ecosystems for startup and venture, because somewhere else, they're not going to share their best deals with other investors. They're going to say, you're raising $500K, $1 million, $2 million, $10 million. Yeah, we can write that check. But here, there's going to be a lot more collaboration. And that means that, if at first you are having trouble raising, you have to find that kind of brand, that champion, that friend, that confidant who's going to be able to then introduce you to the 4, 5, 6 other investors that might be a good fit. I mean, we look at a lot of deals that aren't a good fit for us, but our goal is to never be the last call that you have through that decision tree, right? It's going to be, who can I introduce you to that then becomes a better fit for your investment. And sometimes not every company is right fit for venture, and that's okay too. But we do want to make sure that we're introducing you to the right folks. And that is, I think, unique to this area.
I want to also add to that and pull on a thread that Paige said, that there are 300, 250 VCs. There should be more, right? Let's make this a destination for more venture capital and other sources of capital. The one thing that I've always appreciated here is not just that there is talent, but the high level of talent, right? My friends that work in government here or in private industry are graduates of top universities all around the world. And, you know, we also have our universities here. So why wouldn't founders and funders locate themselves in DC, where we have universities? We have a terrific food scene, and we've got all of the museums, right? So, you know,
That are free.
and the relationship aspect and building it, having worked in New York and London, I can tell you here in DC, I met Dominic just this morning, and he's here supporting the event today. Perhaps a few months ago, I met Kirsten Hildebrand, who runs the Children's National Research Institute, and you know, there's a lot of innovation across different industries, across different segments that I think can be leveraged for, and whose experiences can be leveraged for new entrants that want to set up in DC.
Okay, so we all know that starting a business is one thing, but building it, growing it, and scaling it is a whole other animal. So what about DC is good for startups that want to grow here? And you can share any benefits or stories, but also if you know any of the financial benefits of starting a business in the district, share those too.
Well, I think Michelle sort of said it in some ways here with talent, right? There's just so much talent here. In fact, I've talked to a number of startups that are, the CEO might be based somewhere else, but their biggest, because a lot of these companies these days are remote. And so actually trying to headquarter a company is in a single place is actually more challenging than it's probably been. Certainly, I mean, since the pandemic, this has been the case. And so, you know, whether it's the state funds in Virginia or here in DC or the state fund in Maryland, them trying to invest in a company that says we are Maryland, we are DC, we are Virginia is increasingly challenging. But what you're finding is that usually the highest concentration of employees, whether they're sitting in Boise or St. Louis, the highest concentration of employees is still here, because this is where the talent that, especially when you think about dual use or defense or healthcare or regulated industries in general, you're going to have a presence here. And a lot of that talent that understands how to navigate these different industries, they're going to be here in DC. And so that's why I think you're seeing a lot of high concentration of employees being here, regardless of where the company is located.
So we're setting up the fund here in the district, and purposefully so. The district has a number of programs that allow for financial support. So Sarah's here, so if you haven't met her, make sure you get her card. But there's the Vitality Fund and a soft landing program that they have in place for newer entrants. Again, I think it's still cheaper than New York City or the West Coast in some ways. I think things in DC are a bit more affordable, or the broader DMV area. And I think cost management is part and parcel of your startup, right? Because you're bootstrapping it for quite a number of months, if not years.
Yeah.
I'll add one more thing, which is DC has the biggest customer in the world located here, which is the US government. It's the most complicated customer in the world because it's not just one customer, but if you're looking to do a company that has something to do with healthcare, that has something to do with defense, has something to do with national security, I mean, you name it, there's a buyer for that product. And 10 years ago, investing in sort of gov tech, was sort of, no one really did that. It's like you can get an 8% margin, why bother? But I think Palantir showed that there's a different model out there, which is instead of going like Lockheed or Boeing does and saying, let us win this contract, you put the specs out there and we'll get sort of a cost plus model, we've moved to a classic venture-backed model where VC funding is coming in saying, we will build this product and technology, and we will set the price for it. And we'll sell it to you, we'll sell it to people in the commercial sector, we'll sell it, maybe to police forces or other people around the world. And that model has, I think, fundamentally changed this region as an interesting place to invest, because all of a sudden VCs like us can make more money, on an investment, that's going to have the government as a customer, and we can leverage that customer that's here in our backyard.
Thank you, guys. And also, I'll just add, when I was a founder and I started my business, I was in Baltimore, and then I moved it to DC because there was more capital here. Love Baltimore, and we're still very collaborative with them in the venture ecosystem, and they're just around the corner, so that's an awesome add. But it made more sense for us to be based here because of that. When you want to start and grow and scale a business, you need to be able to capitalize it, and you need to be able to figure out how to get customers that will pay for it. And in DC, almost every major Fortune 500 company has an office here in DC. I think that's what you were saying, Matt. And also, most major VC firms also have at least a satellite office here in DC as well. So it's a really great community for scaling, I think. And then the other thing I wanted to mention too, I don't think anyone touched on, was just the qualified high-tech company tax credit that we have in DC. So for those of you who don't know, if you grow a business in the U.S. and sell it here, you pay capital gains taxes on it. And you pay that at the federal level, but you also pay it at the state level, and that can be 10, 15%, quite high. But in DC, if you're a high-tech company, which is pretty much any company that would be taking venture capital, it's only 3%. So it makes a big difference, both for investors in those companies and for the founders and any employees that own equity when you go to sell. So I think that's worth bringing up. Okay, and you kind of...
Just add, that's also a reason that employees are going to want to be located here instead of Maryland or Virginia.
Yes.
Because they've got a tax arbitrage they can do if they're coming to work for a tech company.
Exactly. And Michelle, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but so I want to think more about the talent question. I think one of the biggest challenges to companies when you start a company, and especially if you're moving into a new city, is finding that talent and figuring out how to connect to it. And what are some of the ways that you can do that in DC?
Network. DC and VC. I'm also part of the DC Tech and Venture Coalition. We have meetups, happy hours, we have summits. So really network and force yourself into it if you're not a natural at networking. And this is such a welcoming community too. I have not reached out to anyone here that I didn't get to have coffee with, right? And I think it's just easier here. It's not transactional. We're very relationship based in DC. But the one thing I wanted to say is that not only do we have source of talent, right, through our networks, our continuing to grow our network, we also have non-dilutive capital sources that you probably spoke about earlier today, right? One of our one of our companies that I mentioned earlier, Curio, because of what it's doing in the nuclear industry, it's attracting people from outside of DC to come here, right? We've had 3-4 transplants moved to DC this year. So we're very excited about that. And with them, their friends start coming, right? And Paige, you come from Baltimore, you see, and probably your international friends are coming here as well, right? And I've always had an international network. My friend who runs one of the biggest companies in India, the equivalent of Amazon, the kid goes to school here. So we're attracting our friends to send their kids here. We're attracting our friends, our broader network, to invest here. And again, the cap gains tax. Thanks for bringing that up. I will remember that when I get tempted to move to Bethesda.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I would add that the ecosystem here it's young. And what I mean by that is you don't have people who have generally been doing venture for 50 years, around here. And with a younger ecosystem, it's, to Michelle's point, it's a lot more welcoming. People are going to take your call. People are going to know each other. As Matt said, people are going to syndicate deals. One point I'll add to what I thought was a great point that Matt made over there is because you're not going to have someone take that $2 million round that he talked about, you've got lots of people that have domain expertise in a particular area. And if you're looking for money, Don't just go blast your idea out to 30 different people. If you're doing something in cyber, find the venture investor that's great at cyber. Because if you get that person excited about what you're doing, and you call me, you call Michelle, you call Matt, you call Paige, whoever, they're going to pay attention. Not because it's your idea, but because this person who's really good at cyber has sort of endorsed it.
To add on the employee front, I think one of the things that we talked about a couple times here is just the access to talent, but specifically colleges and universities. Some of the best colleges and universities are either here in market or within a very short drive, right? You've got, I won't even list them all because I'm going to miss somebody. Someone will be mad, but there's so many great academic institutions here in this region that you're going to be able to hire, teams of students to do something for free. You're going to be able to then pick the best one of them to be your first employee, be your second employee. You're going to be able to hire MBAs or PhDs or any number of these different types of folks directly from these schools ahead of them trying to go and get some consulting job, which they're going to regret because it's way more boring than the stuff that you guys are all doing.
Okay, so we've kind of been touching on this topic along the way throughout all these questions, but what are some of the key resources and organizations that help support startups in DC? And if you want to elaborate a little bit more of some of the ones that came up already, that I think is worth doing as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to start on this. So I'll start with the organization that I co-lead called VC in DC. We are very focused on right now, just giving bandwidth on the investor community, but the investor community cannot be successful if we don't then connect them to the right founders. And so we are thinking about moments in time where we do a really good job of connecting the right founders with the right investors for really high impact and really strong conversations that hopefully then lead to either investment or, as I was saying before, that getting that sort of stamp of approval that then pushes it out to the other 3 people on this panel or to the other 200, 300, 400 investors. We're trying to do a better job of figuring out what the specific thesis is of each one of these investors so that when one of you comes to us and says, hey, we're raising in the fintech space, we're raising a series seed, we have $250K of revenue, and our first customer is Coinbase. Like, well, now I know who to introduce you to. And I can probably think of 4 or 5 different names of those different types of folks. But outside of that, I mean, Michelle mentioned the DC Tech and Venture Coalition. There are angel groups standing up like District Angels that are looking to do things like this. Halcyon is a sort of an endowed house in Georgetown that plays host to, I want to say 10 to 12 different startups every 12 plus weeks. I mean, in different kind of cohorts where you live there for 12 weeks and then get to leave, but also have the support of that ecosystem. There are accelerators and incubators in Northern Virginia, in DC, and I'm sure there's some other names I'm going to be forgetting here, but there's a lot of startup resources if you start to know where to look. And it's really just finding one and then getting them to introduce you to the next one, right? If you come into our network within the VC and DC network, we'll introduce you to Halcyon. We'll introduce you to District Angels or DC Tech and Venture Coalition, DC TAV. So there's a lot of things going on.
I would add, if you're in the AI space and truly love that space and understand it or want to understand it, one of the biggest AI expos is held here in DC, and it's going to be held June 2 to 4 at the Washington Convention Center, and that's by the SESP. And there you're going to find the DOE, depending on what you're building, but for GovTech type of startups, your key audience is going to be there. You have members of government attending. Our allied nations attend as well. They're commandants. So it's, there you will have essentially opportunity to speak to 16,000 people is what they're expecting this year. Last year they had 13,000 people. So a very, very short distance away, but you don't have to look and create all of these, hundreds of meetings. You can go to one place and you have 3 days and you can meet government, private, venture funds. There's a pitch competition that we're doing in partnership with the DC Tech and Venture Coalition. 8 of our DC startups will be pitching at SESP in front of venture funds. So maybe you guys can come back.
And that's just one conference, too, that you're mentioning. That's just one conference. There are so many international and national conferences in DC for like fintech, cybersecurity, health tech, all kinds of things. So anyway,
I would just say there are also, besides an organized conference that you might go to, there are, I'll call it disorganized networks. And I would say base your company here, but spiderweb out, to Crystal City or National Landing, what's called. You got 50,000 Amazon, employees going in over there. So you base yourself here, you can touch a lot more than you can just in your backyard. So take advantage of those, what I'll call sort of, natural networks that are not just formal events.
There's also, I don't know, maybe one of you mentioned this and I missed it, but there's DC Startup Week, which is a huge conference in DC for startups. So they have all different tracks and it's all week long, and all different types of startups, different industries, and different stages. So you meet all kinds of other founders that are interesting and helpful to you, but also investors are there and VCs, and it's a great conference that happens every year in DC.
That's the week of October 20th.
Yep, exactly, October 20th. So I guess maybe now let's share a few examples of some of the DC portfolio companies that you guys have or companies you've invested in that have been thriving in DC, and just share a little bit about how you got to know them and what kind of investment you made and how they're doing now.
There's a company, if you look right through there, that I just noticed. I started the shop 3 years ago. The principal I work for has been doing this for 30 years. One of his investments is right around the corner called Graphica in the disinformation space. It's a very interesting business, but I did not know they're in this building. We have 140 portfolio companies, so excuse me if I forget some of their headquarters. But I will share, like there's a few companies that we've invested in here locally that are doing quite well. One of my favorites, and I'm going to go with the region, I hope that's okay, is a company that's in Arlington called Genlogs. They have put cameras or sensors up alongside highways for the purposes of tracking freight. So they're tracking every truck that goes by. They use computer vision models, and they have been one of the fastest growing startups I think I've probably ever seen. 0 to many millions in the first year, and they're well off to another record year this year. But that has attracted both a lot of local investors at first, and then a much larger ecosystem after that. And so one thing I want to mention actually about DC that I think is interesting is you have a little bit, as an investor, an arbitrage opportunity where you can invest here locally quickly when you get to meet these great companies over coffee, and then you get to introduce them to the national $10 million check writer, $20 million check writer who wants the whole round. And all of a sudden that valuation for those companies goes up, and you've been able to support them early on here. We have another company that will almost certainly be at the AI Expo in a few weeks called Trustable AI that is in the process of successfully raising a seed round from local investors, but with competition from some of the national folks that is in the kind of safe and responsible AI space. So they are helping enterprises adopt AI technologies, and then for those companies that are already using AI, they're helping them make sure that they do it in a sort of safe and responsible way, Trustable AI. I have a fairly long list I could probably go into, but those are two of my favorites right now.
Great, thank you.
One of the companies we're due diligencing now is in the agricultural space, building sensors that will allow for predictive analytics on weather and pestilence. And it's a Mount Pleasant guy, and I got to meet him because he attended a DC Tech and Venture happy hour. So this is the series kind of Bridge to B round, but we're very excited because that technology, though not novel, has applicability to countries like my home country of the Philippines, where we have a large agricultural industry. So that's one we're due diligencing. But again, as one of, I'd say, a great showcase of what it means to be located in the district is Curio, our nuclear company. Again, purposefully located here because we needed to be close to the regulatory authorities, folks on the Hill. We needed to be close to the DOE. So that has been a successful kind of setting up. We achieved almost 10 government grants and awards for a total of $19 million in 2 years. So when you align yourself with a USG priority, which is energy, and I think energy is a priority for all of us globally, right? There you will get support from the government, and we're lucky that we have that system in place where the government is willing to take on the riskiest part so that private investors like yourselves and others can invest with you at the early stages of deep tech companies. So those are the two things. We will continue to invest in the nuclear company within the fund structure. Yeah, there's just a lot here. And we also believe that we don't just invest in one company. If we see 3 or 4 companies that could be a better company packaged together, we will do it. We will create an own company. All of our carbon solutions, we're contemplating on putting them under one, we're going to call it Remine, I think, but there really is a lot of benefits to locating in the District of Columbia.
And I'll just be real quick. We have a couple of companies that we invested in a long time ago that were sort of, locally based. One of which you've probably heard of, a company called Sweet Green, which you've probably eaten at before, which got started around here. Another one called Arcadia Power, which is the largest community solar company now in the United States. And then we have a couple of other ones that are smaller, but those are sort of name brand ones.
That's good. I didn't know. I forgot about Arcadia. I forgot about that overlap. Arcadia is one that we've invested in at K Street also. And also ID.me is a company here that we invested in seed stage through unicorn level through Series D in the cybersecurity space. But I did want to tell one story. There's one founder who came in as an immigrant founder from France, and he was just trying to go to grad school, and he couldn't get a student loan because there was no student loan process for international students. It just didn't exist. You couldn't get them, even though he was like a top of his class, one of the smartest people ever to apply for this grad school program. So he started Empower, which is now the largest student loan company for international students for grad school in the whole country, and he did that in DC. So that's just another cool story that we have. Okay. So are there any local tech trends that you're seeing right now amongst the companies you're looking at in this region?
Sports, I think, is becoming an area of focus. I was fortunate enough to be invited by Jamie to attend the mayor's announcement or a preview of the budget for the district. And what I took away from it was that the district is doubling down on technology and doubling down on sports entertainment. With that announcement, a friend of mine that owns a media streaming company in Europe is quite excited to figure out how to move to DC, right? Because from what I understand, their technology actually had the best streaming of an F1 race without any latency. So I think if we then brought our sports here in DC, I'm an Eagles fan, I gotta admit, that's a Philadelphia football team, but my daughter is growing up here, so imagine the Commanders game being broadcast in Europe. We already have some of the football games being played in London. So I think sports is gonna be an interesting space to look at.
Whether you love him or hate him, I know he's polarizing. Elon Musk is bringing a very different mindset to government and to technology in government. And I think we're going to, for a short term at least, bypass the multi-year contracting cycles and buy, technology from 2018, by the time something finally gets let as a contract. And I think you're going to see a lot of existing systems revitalized by tech companies that are going to be based here. So if I were an entrepreneur, that's something I would focus on right now is how can I bring cutting edge technology to parts of the government? I mean, the FAA comes to mind, obviously. They're using little cursors on screens, out there like, we used back in the 1980s or 90s. It's a big trend, and I think it's going to be a big trend for a long time, and it's going to benefit DC more than anything else.
I'll talk in buzzwords for a second here. In 2017, when I was really kind of getting into venture, the buzzword was in this market, it was cybersecurity. Everything was cyber. It was someone leaving some 3-letter agency with some very big problem that they wanted to go and solve on the kind of commercial side. That has really evolved over the last 7, 8, 9 years, however long that's been, into defense and dual use. And so the buzzword here in DC is going to be a lot of it's around dual use, but that doesn't preclude the other buzzword of regulated industries, right? Like there's a lot of things going on around regulated industry that is very related to that dual use angle. And then the third, which is much more macro, but I think worth mentioning, is just, of course, AI, right? DC's focused on it, the nation's focused on it, the world's focused on it. Every slide deck I've gotten over the last 3 years went from 10 pages to 11 pages, and the 11th page was your AI strategy. And so every company is in some way an AI company. But the question is where does that AI slide fit into your deck? Is it the second slide, or is it the 11th slide in your appendix? And both of those, either one is fine. You should not pretend like you're a horizontal AI company if you're not, because one, that's probably going to be pretty expensive, a lot of competition, but there's going to be an efficiency strategy that comes from AI in some capacity. That's why I think whether it's around dual use or defense or cybersecurity, AI becomes, or just regulated industry in general, AI becomes a piece of that. And how does it fit into your buckets, into your company?
Yeah. Okay. So we have only 2 or 3 minutes left. So last question, but any final thoughts or advice that you would give to startups in DC or looking to locate in DC or start a company here?
Just do it. Literally,
Yes, just do it.
don't think about it, don't plot about it, just go do it. Now's a great time to start something up here.
You can act on it today, right? Our hosts, Damped, are here, Sarah, Jamie, and the team are here. And I don't know if Joseph is still here. Tishman actually offers some co-working spaces, which makes it easy to, have a footprint here and meet all the government contacts that you need to network with DC, VC and DC, and the DC TAV, and all of the other networking and strong associations there are here.
The best time to meet your investors in DC is 12 months ago. So you're in some ways like starting behind, and I think the idea behind that is just when you say jump in, just do it. I think you have to start building. This is a relationship-based town in so many ways, and so developing those relationships today are going to play out over the next 12, 24, 36 plus months.
And last thing I'll say is, to John's point, like now is a great time to be building a business here. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier. This didn't come out earlier in this panel, but the district has made a huge commitment to startups and tech in DC. And especially even recently, like the venture capital fund that we manage at K Street Capital for the district is in total with private capital. It's going to be $52 million invested into DC startups, DC-based startups in the next few years. So, and that's just one thing. There's lots of other programs and incentives that have been built into the agenda in the district. So it's a great time to be here. That's it. That's a wrap. Thank you all so much.